All right, so our speaker today is Quinn Allgood, co-founder of Tag and Go. Brief introduction. So he attended Utah Tech University and studied business administration and management. He worked at Zions Bank for quite a while. He started as a teller and worked his way up to operations manager. And then he founded a company that I think almost everyone in here is familiar with, Tag and Go, which we'll hear about in a second. I want to just mention one other thing about him. So just knowing the little bit about him, I was really interested in having Quinn come and speak. And then we chatted this summer, and he told me he was going to Mongolia, which is not, Orlando or San Diego, your kind of cliched vacation destinations. And he explained to me that one of his good friends had one of his bucket list items was to go back to Mongolia, and he didn't want to go alone. And so Quinn said, I'll go with you. And that's when I was like, man, this is a guy, even apart from founding Tag and Go, this is the kind of guy that I want my students to hear from. So without further ado, please welcome Quinn Allgood.
Thank you. I didn't know that was going to be a part of the introduction. Yes, I went there for 16 days. I've never ate so much mutton in my life, nor did I ever have mutton really prior to this. So I was definitely excited to get back and eat some real food. But no, I'm glad to be with you guys here today. I kind of want to know a little bit about you guys, and so this is why it's going to be a little bit interactive in what we do. So it seems like we have a good crowd that wants to be entrepreneurs, some that are undecided. I totally understand that. It's like, hey, what am I going to do if I try to decide to do something? And then we have some that are no's. And so I like this. We're going to go to the next slide, and it's going to ask just another question. And so you can enter in right here. You can join at menti.com, enter in the code, and just basically kind of helps gather some information. And we'll be ending. You can ask questions, comments, and things through this. So we'll take our time to kind of understand what people are thinking. We'll continue to let people respond, but this doesn't surprise me, as the last time I did this, it was about the same thing. Money, freedom, financial freedom, want to be their own boss. The interesting thing about entrepreneurship is, and I'll just say this, it depends on how big and deep you want to go into entrepreneurship, but freedom sometimes gets taken away with entrepreneurship too. So it's not always what it cracks up to be. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So thank you guys all for your feedback there. This is awesome to see success, be able to travel, to have my own ideas. Creativity is a big one, to be able to help others, give back. I love this. Thank you guys. We'll go to the next slide here. And then how many of you guys have heard about Tag and Go? Just real quick, just plug for Tag and Go. If you haven't, that's good too. And if you don't want to participate, make sure you plug in right there. So I started thinking about the age of 23. I was really trying to decide. I was sitting in college, most like you guys, and trying to decide, what am I going to do? I want to be an entrepreneur. My father was an entrepreneur. I wanted to follow in his steps. I wanted to find something I was passionate about. He did coins and had a coin shop, and I wasn't the same passion type in the rare coins and metals as he did, but it was just something that really, really intrigued me. And so I wanted to kind of follow in my father's footsteps. I lost my father at 14, so he's a bigger inspiration to me and a big driving and motivating factor in my life. And so it was kind of like one of those things, like as a little boy, you always just want to grow up to be like your dad. And so in my eyes, perfect. He knew all the answers to everything. And so I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to follow that same pathway. And so 23, I'm sitting there, and I didn't have this aha moment of what I wanted to do or anything like that. I started working at Zions Bank when I was 19 and was working there. I started as a teller, and I was for a job to earn money because everybody needs money. And I realized that, hey, I could make more money if I continued to learn and grow. So I continued to learn and grow with the company, and they offered lots of different benefits as far as with growth. And So I took just every single opportunity. But I never thought, man, I want to be a banker. No offense. No offense to you bankers right here. You know? And so I never thought I wanted to be a banker. And then I actually started getting into it, and I was like, you know what? I actually could make a career out of this. I enjoy it. And so I kept on pursuing it. I ended up going up to Salt Lake quite a bit for branch managing trading. And so I just took every opportunity I could to just learn and grow. So I did enjoy banking in the long run. And I learned a lot about foundation and platform managing. And so it was a really, really good start for me in kind of this journey. But the biggest point about it all, we'll go to the next slide, is that's where I met my business partner, Connor. He ended up working with me for 3 months there. We just shared kind of our passion, our journey. He also lost his father at a young age, and his father was an entrepreneur, and so we just had this dream of doing something. And we didn't know what it was, but we just put it out there. So we ended up forming a first business called Allgood Acquisition, just based off of our last name. And it was just acquisition. We were only apparently going to acquire one thing. And so when we did this, once again, we had no idea what we were going to do, but I was investing in stocks at the time. It was 2012, 2011. You could basically jump into any stock at that time because it was so low and do really, really well. And so we started trading stocks together. We ended up getting into a penny stock called TAG, T-A-G-G. It was supposed to be the next Google. And it was this awesome penny stock that I remember sitting in class watching this rise up. And we put in like $7,000, like everything we had. And then like the next day it just tanked and was worthless. So TAG actually comes from the penny stock. So T-A-G-G was the stock ticker name. And that's where TAG came from. And it was just a really good reminder that we're going to utilize this. So I'm going to jump ahead for a second, but when we bought our first car wash, we used it and called our first car wash TAG Car Wash. To remind ourselves that it's not just easy to go and invest in something and just make anything instant. So you have to have hard work and grit and an entrepreneur. I mean, just to make anything type of work, it's not just easy money. So anyway, that's I kind of jumped ahead really quick there, but I grew up here in southern Utah. I went to Pineview High School in St. George, stayed here for school, ended up meeting my wife in high school. I worked at Harmon's, was really my first job. I worked at the city of St. George in the Parks Department, and then worked at Zions Bank, and then ended up starting a car wash. So how did that fall into our laps? So we, like I said before, we ended up opening our business of Allgood Atkin at McDonald's using their free Wi-Fi, and didn't know what we were going to do, but we had started telling people that we were going to start something, that we were going to be business owners. And so my brother-in-law, he was in real estate, and he said, hey, I think I might have an opportunity for you. There's this really ran down car wash, and this guy had it on the market a year ago, and he just wants to get out of it. It's ran down, and you're going to have to put a lot of work into it, but I think you can get it for a really good deal. So this old car wash, and I'll show a picture of this. This is the old car wash, and so it was in Hurricane. This old car wash, we were like, we want this thing. We're going to make this as a side hustle. This is going to be an investment for us. Once again, not thinking this was going to be a business, thinking this is just going to be an investment. And because it's easy, all you do is you go and collect quarters, clean out the bays, and that's it. It's that simple. Lo and behold, it was completely different. But how we got here took so much effort and so much work. So I worked at a bank, mind you, and we were looking for a way to finance this thing. And so that's the other challenge is how do you, first of all, that's, kind of told the story about how we found it, but then it's like, hey, how do we make this deal come to life? And so this car wash, he had it listed originally for like $700,000. We ended up talking him into like $250,000 for the car wash. And then we had to figure out how to finance the thing. And so we went to all these banks, and we were bankers. So we were just like, yeah, hey, we want to get a loan for this. And basically went to at least a half a dozen banks, and they all said no. Nope, not interested. They didn't say that we were too young, but we were too young. And it was a special use property, because what else are you going to do with a car wash? Banks have already taken car washes back, and they don't like them. They don't want to operate car washes. They just want their loan money back. And so they were looking at all these different things. And then not only that, it didn't have financials to it. So we got turned down, and like 3 months later, we're just like basically giving up on this dream. And then it was like, hey, you know what? I asked Connor, I said, what did your grandma do to help get started in ranching? And so he went and talked to his grandma, and his grandma said, hey, we went and had a relationship banking. We went to a small local bank who just gave a chance on us, and you know, it was more of a relationship aspect of things. So we found a small local bank that we hadn't talked to, and we're like, hey, will you give us a shot on this? And they're like, there's no financials. And Connor's like, I'll take the bank statements and make financials out of it. So Connor he majored in accounting. He made all the financials, went through like 2 years worth of bank statements to make financials. And they said, perfect. You know, we'll lend on this, but we'll only lend, I think it was like 60%. And I was like, okay, well, where do we get the 40%? Because we're in college, we have no money. And so where are we going to get the other 40%? And so we ended up talking to my brother-in-law. He's like, hey, have you ever heard of seller carryback? And we're like, no. What's a seller carryback? He's like, it's where the seller actually has a loan on the property as well, where basically you're not paying them the full amount. They're going to hold back a certain amount, and you're going to be paying them. So I'm going to have two lenders now. I'm going to have the bank and then the seller. And then the seller said, yeah, we'll do 30%. And then so there's still 10%. And it was like, okay, 10%. That's 25 grand. Well, we don't have 25 grand. We lost all 7 grand of it, you know, in the stock market. That's all we had. And so we did some creative thinking, and I'm not saying that anybody should do this, but we took credit card debt and did a balance transfer. So we did a balance transfer on credit cards. We knew that we had about 18 to 24 months to pay this credit card back without interest. And then we also had student loans that we could take out because we were students and with deferred payments. So it was the best thing. So, like I said, I'm not by any means saying that you should do this, but we were very creative in our approach to financing. We figured that we could get 25 grand out of student loans and out of credit card debt. And so that was how we structured this deal, and we got a loan done. Now, it was, what do we do with this thing? It's as easy as collecting quarters and cleaning it out. So this old dumpy car wash, we had to put so much money back into it. And we had, there's an automatic in it, and it didn't work. And it worked, and the guy had it operable, but we ran our own personal car through it and said, this is a joke. Like, we were just ripping people off. So we shut it down, but that was a source of revenue that we were shutting down when we did that. But we didn't have the money to put in a new machine. We were like, you know what, we can't take money from customers without giving them some sort of an experience. And so we decided to shut it down. We kept the bays clean, and really just kind of built up the customer base and trying to figure out how to fix the equipment, work on the equipment, try to make the facility nicer. And it took a really, really long time. But the reason why I have this picture up here is to show that, like, bump in the road. This is our picture when my wife was pregnant with our first child. So it says bump ahead. And I look at this back at this time because it was not the most ideal time to start a business. So my wife was pregnant. We found a second car wash that we were going to invest in, and we did 100% financing on that one way as well. And we said, you know, are we going to hit the ground running and go full in on car washing and make this something, or are we going to keep on doing this as a side hustle? And so it was this opportunity that we had to really determine if we're going to just go all in or not. So when we were considering this, my wife was pregnant. I was going to take a pay cut going and doing this. My mom just passed away from breast cancer. I was still going to school. And so, like, all of these things, like, in my life was not the perfect timing. But I knew at that moment that if I didn't take the opportunity then I might be 5 years down the road and didn't make a decision then either. Because when is that perfect timing going to be? And so I made that entrepreneurial leap and made that leap into the fact that, like, you know what, we're going to do everything to make this work. And I'm grateful that we did, because it really did. It was our driving factor the whole way. It was like every little bit of money that we spent, it was money that was literally coming out of our pocket, money that we could have been using for anything else. And so it was just this journey of never the right timing on that aspect of things, but it was the perfect timing in the space of car wash. We're going to get you guys a little bit more. All right, so two truths and a lie. Sorry, 2 lies and a truth. Just guess which one is something that I actually did. I didn't mention this early on, but what did we do to actually supplement income? So in this time when we took pay cuts, we were barely kind of scraping by. Our wives were also working. My wife was a special ed teacher, and Connor's wife was a teacher as well. And so we ended up being very creative in the fact of, like, hey, we got to make some more money. We have these 2 car washes. It's fine, but we need to end up doing more. So we were looking at anything and everything as far as a possibility. And so what did we do? We ended up, I like it, you know? I get it. So I must be pretty good at, you know, selling pest control or something like that. Sales side of it is going stronger than the pumping side of things, so that's good. And really what it comes down to is this next picture will be shared here. We ended up pumping septic. So in the meantime, we were doing everything we could to make it work in the car wash, and we were paying our bills. We were still able to pay ourselves a little bit more, but we wanted to be able, we're cleaning out the bays, we figure out how to fix things, and we're like, okay, we still need to make more money. And so we ended up pumping septic. So this is a picture of me where I was down there, and I had this big old hose. You know, they got this big old 24-inch diameter septic hole, and I was down there sucking out that poop. And there's this thing called a crust buster. So think of a weed whacker with metal blades, and you stir it up because there's a layer of crust on the top of, like, toilet paper and everything else, all the fun stuff there. So, like, we would actually have to stir it up so it was liquefied, so then we could suck it out with this 3-inch hose. And this, I will tell you, this is a day that, like, I was down there sucking it out. Connor was using the crust buster and forgot to turn it off when he pulled it out, and literally splattered all over me. So one of those moments, I'm smiling, he's like mortified that this happened, and I just think it's the funniest thing that happened, because first of all, this wasn't our first time pumping, so we had done hundreds of other ones prior to this, and it was just, to me, this was like a moment of, like, this is a story. If anything else, this is a story that happened. He's like, hey, you want to go home and shower? I'm like, no, let's just get some wet wipes and I'll be good. So continue on the day and continue pumping. So we pumped all over southern Utah Cedar, up in Cedar Mountain. And this is all foundational in the grit and grind to make something happen, and saying we're willing to do whatever it takes, even pump poop, to be successful. You know, these car washes we were slowly gaining a reputation back, because those reputations were gone when you buy an old dumpy car wash. Everybody had been ripped off, nobody wanted to go to these things, and we had to gain that reputation back. So we slowly gained it back through time, throughout the years. That first car wash that I showed you, when we first initially bought it, we were grossing $2,300 a month off of that, gross. When we ended up selling it 3 years ago, we were grossing top line $22,000 a month on average. It was awesome to see that growth happen, but it was a very, very long time happening. And like I said, we had to put in the work into doing it. And we didn't know how to fix certain things. So we were almost like talking to a car mechanic, where we call up the phone to our distributor and say, hey, all of a sudden, when I hold down the trigger on this hose, all of a sudden it just shakes really bad like a machine gun. And the guy would be like, yeah, that's called cavitation. I was like, cavitation, let me write that down. Okay, what does that mean? And he was like, that's when, you know, a piston is going bad in the pump, and so you need to change all those pistons. And it was like, okay, sweet, thanks. How do I do that? And where do I buy those? And so it was a learning experience through and through, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity that we had to start with small car washes and kind of go from there. Now, how did we transition from these self-serve car washes to the express model? Now, the express model happened because we were in the car wash industry. We saw the car washes, and my uncle was in California. Connor was up in a rodeo up in Idaho, and he saw this big old long car wash with a bunch of free vacuums, and he's like, what is that? And he went through and experienced it, and then my uncle that same weekend was telling me about this car wash in California, and we're like, so we started looking into it, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be amazing. Like, this is something that Southern Utah needs. And so we were like, let's do this. So once again, now we're back to the grind of like, how are we gonna finance this thing? How are we gonna build this thing? Like, we've never built anything before. We don't have plans for anything like this. How are we gonna find our distributors? And really, we just kept on asking questions. We asked people, said, hey, what are people looking for in car washes? We asked, hey, where would we buy this equipment? Who would do the designs of these buildings? And we just kept on asking questions because we didn't have the answer to this. We didn't have a mentor in this space besides what I would say our distributor. And our distributor helped out a lot in kind of helping. But then we got to this other part where it was like, okay, now how are we going to fund this? Because now we're talking about $250,000 was that first car wash. We ended up putting another $250,000 in it of improvements. And now we're talking about a $3.5 million car wash to build at that time. How are we going to fund a $3.5 million car wash? So we went and talked around to a bunch of different people, and basically we were super close to raising our down payment for it. And then it was like, hey, we need a partner. So then we ended up partnering. Guess how many locations, really quick, if you'll take the opportunity. We do have 22 locations, but I'm going to back up a little bit and say, how did you go from 1 location to 22 locations? So 8.5 years ago, we opened up our first tunnel location, and we ended up having to get a partner in that. And that was something we didn't want to do because we didn't want to give up ownership. We didn't want to have to give up control. I'll make this story really short. The partnership, he ended up bringing another partner in to help fund these. It worked out for less than a year. We ended up having to buy them out with more debt, and it was kind of a mess. So pick your partnerships wisely. That would be my biggest thing. And I will say, if anything, if there's one thing that I've learned, I have probably the best partner ever in Connor. We are on the same page at all times. There's probably less than a handful of times I could say that we were ever in more of an argument that we didn't talk to for maybe 12 hours in, and then figured something out. Partnerships are everything. We've been through multiple partnerships when we were trying to raise capital and to continue to build. But partnerships are going to be your number one key. And I've had people say, well, how do you find that perfect partner? And honestly, I don't know the answer to that. I literally had him walk in. It was almost like the story of hey, I walked in and it was like, he's the perfect match made in heaven. That was the guy. He walked through the doors at Zion's Bank, and I was like, this is the guy. This is the guy that was my partner. And now that's how it worked out for me. But that's not necessarily how it works out for everybody, and I understand that. But I will say we are completely different in our personality strengths. Good cop, bad cop sort of situation. I'm usually the bad cop, he's the good cop. And we just have our own strengths that we really build upon each other. But we're also in the same goal and in the same trajectory of what we want to do. So our dream was to only ever do 3 tunnel car washes. That was it. And we basically built out our 3, and then we realized if we don't continue building out our region of St. George and Cedar City, then, because we only had 1 in Cedar City and then 2 in St. George of these express model, then how are we going to continue to thwart off any competition? And so we decided, we're going to keep on building, and there was still opportunity for us to do that. So we only had dreams of owning this territory of Cedar and St. George. So after that, we got to about 7 locations. We had a competitor come in and basically say, if you don't sell to us, we're going to come take you out. sort of mentality. That really rubbed us the wrong way because we're super competitive. And so we said, bring it. And basically we called up some people and said, hey, we need to put this location in a contract, this location in a contract. So we were very, very competitive in our nature. Today we are going up against some of the biggest, we are going up against the biggest car wash companies up in northern Utah. Mr. Car Wash, which is the #1 car wash with over 500 locations. You have Quick Quack that has 250 locations, and you have Take 5, which has like 300, almost 400 locations. 2 of those are on the stock exchange. One of them just got an $850 million infusion for a minority stake. I look at this as we started with credit card debt and student loans, and we're now playing with companies that have billions of dollars. If you go and look at Mr. on the stock market today, like they're in the billions in their cap. So when I look at my story, when I look at what we've been able to do, I don't think at all for 1 second that it wasn't meant to be in some sort of way or fashion, but also that we didn't put forth some sort of effort and work into it. And it wouldn't have happened without that. And that's where I think about everybody that's in here today. Whatever you guys really want to truly do, it's all about your mindset. I never would have thought in my wildest dreams that we would have ever done 20 locations, and we're at 22 right now. If you would have told me that at the beginning and said, hey, if my business partner would have said, hey, I want to do 20 locations, I would have said, you're out of your mind. There's no way we can do that. But what happened is we took our steps, and we took one step, and then another step, and then another step, and then another step. And now looking back, it's like, wow, that's amazing. But I would have been shaking in my boots had you ever thought, like, hey, how are we going to make this happen? In the last 2.5 years, we went from 7 locations to 22 locations. So when you say about the freedom and the money aspect of things, we are still, I would say the freedom aspect of things, I guess I should say I have a lot of freedom in a lot of ways, but I also have, like in this next slide, we have 22 locations. We have over 400 employees that work with us. We're the 48th largest chain. We have 2 flex serve models, and this is like our indoor facility. But I look at that and I say, I have so many people that are counting on this always being a successful business and company. So there's not just about me anymore. It's not just about Connor and what we want. It's about really continuing to grow for the opportunity within the people that work within our organization. When we opened our first door of Tag & Go, we hired 6 people, and then it was Connor and I. So we had a total of 8 people was all when we opened up the doors. One of those people actually still works with us today. So he's worked with us for 8.5 years, and I look at that as like those people are relying on us every single day to make the right choices and to make the right decisions to continue to grow, and they're looking for opportunities to grow themselves as well. So a lot of what drives us every single day is the people that work for us. And then not only that, it's the communities that we serve and are in as well. When we rally ourselves around our communities, that's when the communities will rally around business. And I see it time and time again. I look at this in my own personal experience. When I lost my dad, when I lost my mom, those communities rallied around our family and really gave back and helped us along the way. And so one of our biggest things is always giving back. We have a big scare wash that's going to be happening in October. All the proceeds end up going to cancer patients, people who are fighting cancer. And so we're really excited to give back and be a part of the community that way. Last year, I believe it was a football coach, an assistant football coach here. His son has been battling, I think it was leukemia, his second go-around. And so he was one of the recipients last year, and that was so awesome and touching. So to me, what drives me every single day to do what I do is not necessarily the freedom aspect of things. It's the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. It's the opportunity to give back and do so much more and do so much more good in the world that we live in today. We're battling in our next one, and when we talk about the future, some of the things that we're battling right now is the competition. We have a bunch of PE money that's coming in, private equity money that is coming into the market that's sucking up a bunch of these car washes. And we're right now seeing this rise in the last 5 years of car washes. And I'm sure you guys have seen it all over. And we're also seeing this fall right now, which is very interesting. And for me personally, I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting because it's opportunity for us to be able to acquire some of these car washes that went in and they basically sucked the life out of them, because that's where we started, is the people that sucked the life out of these car washes and didn't reinvest in the people, didn't reinvest in the business. And that's where I see that there's a lot of potential in the future. Capital, we still have capital restraints all the time. We still battle with raising money every single day. But what we don't do is we don't take private equity money. So the reason for private equity money is anything that they basically want control. They want to make sure that they care mainly about the numbers and how it's performing. And that's basically giving up a lot of say and ownership in what you're trying to do. So we keep everything private. So we do a lot of financing through banks and private individuals that continue to lend to us every single day. Technology, there's a lot of technology that's coming into the industry, but we're still lagging behind in issues with technology. And then the industry knowledge, there's a lack of industry knowledge of understanding how these car washes function. And so there's a lot to do with training up our techs, training up our attendants, helping even the consumers understand some of those things that are happening. So it's a very fun industry, and I kind of glanced through, like I gave you a lot of meat at the very beginning of our story, and then wiped out the last 8 years or so really quick in the last 10 minutes. But I kind of just wanted to share the initial startup, and that's, I think, is the hardest part. And then the follow-up is just continually grinding it out and putting that step forward every single time. I kind of mentioned this a little bit before. Vision-wise, the vision for us was to only do a few car washes. It was actually initially started as a side investment for the self-serves. And then when we did the tunnels, we only wanted to do a few. And that's why I said visions can change. It doesn't have to be the same the whole time. And so I think sometimes people just think of a vision of what they're going to do, and then they stick with that. And for us, it's been very fluid in movement. Resilience is key. It's not easy, but I will say it's probably one of the most fulfilling things that I feel like I've been able to do throughout my life. I've learned a ton, and there's things that I'm learning every single day about myself, about others, about how to run businesses. I tell you this in the fact that, like, once again, we're running against some of these companies that have billions of dollars in funding, and we're the small guy, we're the small fish, and we're just that nuisance to them, and it's fun. And it's, like, to me, that's the part that's invigorating. For anybody that's thinking about entrepreneurship, just start now. Like I said, there's nothing that has to be like, oh, boom, I have this amazing, brilliant idea. It's really about just, hey, if this is something you want to do, just put it out there. Put it out there in the universe. Talk to people about it. That's what we did. And we just put it out there. And then making sure that when you do build up a team, you build it up with the right people. That makes a huge difference. And I didn't really speak a ton about that, but a lot of our success comes with having the right people in place and making sure that those people continue to have the opportunity to learn and grow. Next, I have basically an open response that you guys can ask any sort of question that you want, and we'll see what you guys ask. See what I missed. Yeah.
So I went to the car wash yesterday, and I've been to your competitors too, just to kind of see what it's like. And some things I've noticed you've done different. I'm kind of curious to what other little details you found that makes you guys different, because most of you guys now have the interior spray and the window spray. That's a big deal. You always have customer service. I feel like you never pressured to like buy a membership there. You know, what kind of little things have you done to make yourself different than the competitors?
You know, you can copy everything, and people do originally when we brought out towels, nobody else had towels here. All of a sudden everybody else started towels. Those are easy things. It's the people that makes the difference. Truly is. The attention to customer experience and the details of it all is what makes that biggest difference. Sure, there's some things that we do with our equipment, there's some things, but most of the stuff consumers will never see. So it's really more about their feeling and how they experience the wash, more so than anything else for us in our industry with competition. If I look at it, it's like we're comparing gas stations, right? You think of Maverick versus like a Chevron. Where are you going to go? I mean, they both have fuel, they both have food inside, but there's one that has a higher experience, higher quality experience. So those are the things that we kind of try to focus on in those details.
I mean, your place was slammed. I mean, it's almost hard to find. Hard to find a place to vacuum out the car where you drive by other competitors.
Yeah.
It's a ghost town over there, so kind of interesting to watch.
No, awesome. Thank you. Most profit in 1 month. Profit? Man, that is a loaded question. Profit before loan payments? Profit before, like, if you want to just talk about net before any sort of like payments based off of, like, we're growing company, but 640,000, and that's before bank payments, interest payments. So, will you ever sell Tag and Go? I think that's a great question. We have no desires to sell Tag and Go. 2.5 years ago, I mentioned we went from an explosion from 7 locations to 22 locations. The reason why that happened is because my business partner said, hey, my wife and I feel like we need to move up north. And I said, what the freak? Are you kidding me? Like, you can't do that? Like, we've been tied at the hip for 7 years. Like, I've known you longer than you've known your wife. So, this is bromance at its finest. So I had a huge problem with it. And I told him, and like, I had tears, everything. Like, I mean, literally losing my best friend. But we went down the road of like, do we sell the majority of stake of it? Do we sell it completely? Do we sell a minority? Do we just like take some chips off the table? What do we want to do? Continue to grow? He works remotely. He'd get bored. So basically, we went down every single rabbit hole. We went to market to sell. And I threw out a stupid number. And we got 6 offers back on that stupid number. And then we realized, is this what we want to do? Like, did we do it all for the money? My wife would kill me if I'm at home all day. So it's like, so we decided to bag all those, and we said, we're going to keep going. And that's when I say, like, we went up against the big guys, because all the big guys are up north in Utah County. And so we decided to say, screw it, we're going to keep going. And so we've done a ton, and it's been a crazy, hectic last 2.5 years. So I say my freedom, in some ways, is not as free as maybe as I thought it would be after 11 years. But I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy what I do every single day. Go ahead.
As a business owner, what is your daily schedule like?
I mean, I hate meetings, but I have a lot of meetings. And so it fluctuates a lot. We opened up a new site up in Rexburg, Idaho last week. I'll be going up to Idaho this week for ribbon cutting, spending some time at the site there. The most consistent thing that's happened is I do one-on-ones with my directors of operations, marketing, maintenance, and HR. And then I have a team meeting as well. So those are kind of the most consistent things that happen every single week. Everything else is just kind of depends on what's needed. I go through a lot of financial reports like once or twice a month, just kind of assess. So depends. I'm a big fan of your LinkedIn. What was your number one driver that motivated you to persist? So yeah, I am on LinkedIn, and I'm on LinkedIn because my marketing team told me to be on LinkedIn and share a bunch of our stories that have happened to really grow some of that networking aspect of things up north. So if you do want to, you can go ahead and follow me or my business partner on LinkedIn. We try to share fun stories every now and again of how we got to where we're at. But the driving and motivating factor for us is the people. It's the people and being able to give back. That would be number one every single time. I love the people that is in our team. And don't get me wrong, it's not always fun to have to go in and have tough conversations with others as well. But I know for myself, that's a huge learning experience. So I love the growth aspect of it as well. I'm humbled every single day about what I learn about myself and others.
I think we've got time for one more.
Okay, one more question. And I'm just going to spit it out here. Anybody have a question that they desire? Go ahead.
I wrote it down 1 second. What would the ideal startup look like if you could go back? You have to go through all the credit card debt and the student loans.
Man, I don't know if I'd take anything back because there was lessons learned along the way every single time. It's the journey. If everything was given to me and handed to me, I wouldn't appreciate it as much. I don't think I would have worked as hard for it. I look at my kids today. I have 4 boys right now, and I've already told them that they got to figure out their own crap. Nothing was handed and given to me. So, they're 10 years old and they already know that. My oldest is 10 and my youngest is 1. So, they're going to figure out themselves. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything I could change because it would change the trajectory of everything.